Otherwise you get the feedback.
Have you seen the pipes they build on?
Yes, I thought that was a lot easier.
Yeah, really. And I don't have any spares, so.
Get one of those t-shirt guns and just shoot
Right.
it in the road.
Close it all the way up here?
Yep.
I don't think we'll have to.
Fine zoom down here. Click that open and then go ahead and use it so it's live right there.
I think there's a lot of people. People walking around.
Well, I did.
We got runs and bad news for last week or so. I was with somebody on Friday for lunch and we were around a bunch of people and I was coughing and everybody's looking at me. It's ours.
Right with the mayor, huh?
Are we gonna have a mayor?
Oh, we have a son.
We might have a vice mayor. I haven't spoken to Fletcher all day.
I see what you're saying.
Are we supposed to sign in?
Well, they publish.
Are we supposed to sign in?
rates,
Better do it. We just got comfortable.
Did you see the trees we planted?
Oh, yeah.
I think you. Yeah. He is going to tie the trees so the wind doesn't.
A really nice suggestion. Steel?
Oh, well.
Yeah, we still very well.
I'll check with him, like,
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, you don't have to worry about it. You sure?
Yeah. Just asked me if I wanted to share it. It's not-
You can do that. Maybe
We all remember to sign in now. We all remember to sign in now, thanks to somebody today.
we want to take.
Yeah.
Yes, since I got a lot of fun, I have.
Yeah.
But I make sure I log into my computer will share it.
Eric's got it.
Oh, thank you.
It's a
Oh,
mechanism.
geez, I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm
We have two. We're paying all those.
They're all zeros.
And the boat trip.
Those.
For zeros?
They're zeros.
Well, that's a zero.
The last piece of paper in your motion file. Motion file.
It says it's incorrect.
Here.
Scaled.
The last piece
But
of
that's the
paper
old
in the
one.
motion file. We'll work on it. I haven't been able to go and put it out there to everybody about.
I should be able to share
it. It's not current staff.
I think that's right. Does it have a season?
So you do need a closed session. It'll take all about 2 minutes. but-
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never been yet. I've only been here about 2 years, so.
Oh, here it is.
Did they
Maybe this one will
I was
work.
just looking for a text message or something. and I don't have one, so.
Okay, and that's a zero.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I got it.
I just shared.
Thank you. That says incorrect. I did it again.
Yeah, but I just shared it with her.
Well,
Why keep sound losing signal?
Let me just write it down.
Oh,
sorry.
My daughter, UVA, they had patient code.
It's hooked up on my computer to share,
So definitely.
and I said, yes.
Trying to say we should work out.
But
Then he
it's
still
still
wasn't
working. I don't know why.
So all 20, 30 of those people have been exposed. They're not tested. Patient has. Surgery. All the other, every other.
Yeah, I mean, I can get us started if he's on the line.
And was not tested.
It's 7:04. We should get started.
Rob had to go, yes.
Hope it's okay.
They were on the opposite.
I'm just gonna give him a quick call.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And who else was, oh, my friend. There's a water.
It's okay. Please don't worry about it. Please don't worry about it.
The schedule. Yeah.
Went straight to
Now,
voicemail.
emergency, you understand.
So as a reminder for everyone, when you're speaking, please pull your mask down. And those of you with microphones, please use them. For those of you without microphones, the microphone is up here, so enunciate well. The other thing that I did was I put in front of you a packet of the resolutions and the motions in the order they appear on the agenda. So you should be able to page through, and when we need the motion, there's some suggested language there for you. And also, one other thing is, if you remember, I was going to insert a newsletter in with the real estate taxes that are going out momentarily, but I wanted your approval and final opinion on this. I did get a couple of emails back. I've made those changes. So if we don't hear anything back from you, I'm going to say by noon tomorrow, we're going to start stuffing envelopes and get these ready to go. Okay? No?
Want to go ahead and get started? Yeah. Well, I will be glad to sit in until the mayor gets here. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Lisa, will you call roll, please?
Sure, Mayor Foskey, Vice Mayor Bloxham,
Present?
Councilmember Marino,
Present.
Councilmember Krause,
Present.
Councilmember Berger,
Present.
Councilmember Oswald,
Present.
Councilmember Gillespie.
Present.
A majority of members are present. We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes from our September 28th meeting. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, substitutions?
I did. Page 6, it says town council must appoint a member to the vacant seat who must run for re-election. I think it's may run for re.
They have to run for re-election.
You do?
Yes.
Did you know that? I didn't either.
The old bait and switch.
You're on.
You called me Denise.
Oh,
My name is He's calling me Denise.
It's been a while. Sorry.
Any other additions or corrections?
No.
Hearing none, I would gladly accept a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
Thank
I
you.
second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes approved. Brings us to the first order of business, which is a public hearing, and Mr. Town Manager, I'll
Sure.
let you take over.
Sure. As we all know that there's a public hearing required anytime that we change or alter town code. This town code for remote participation for council members has been discussed by council, reviewed by council. Now we're looking for public input. And then in next month's meeting, we would take a motion to adjust and recodify. So the motion or the tonight's public hearing is to discuss the remote participation code that was put into the agenda packet.
Do we have any public comment regarding?
Go with it, whatever makes it easier.
This is the same, this is what we've been doing by, over this state of emergency, I guess. So we're fine. Correct? I mean, this is-
Yeah, this allows for remote participation for town council members for either a temporary permanent disability, medical condition, an emergency, or a personal matter. And you can attend remotely for up to 2 times per year. That person, they may vote, but they are not considered as part of the quorum. We still have to have a physical quorum present to hold a meeting.
I just want the public to have a clear picture. Thank you.
These two sentences, Mr. Spock, seem, I don't understand, maybe you can help me. The remote
Well, I can
location
hear you.
of the council member need not be open to the public, but the minutes shall record the reason for the member absence and the remote location from which the member participated.
Sure.
That makes it open to the public, isn't it, when it's in the minutes?
No, it would be an example of if I were on council and I were ill and I didn't want to attend a public meeting, I would say that I'm attending from my home. My home is not then part of the public meeting, but the minutes need to say, Mr. Spuck attended remotely because of an illness and he attended from his home and, such and such.
But I agree with Joy, it sounds contradictory.
Yeah, because it says it's not open to the public.
It's
Then
not
you're
open to the public, no. So the public is not invited to come sit in my living room.
Oh, the minutes will reflect.
That you were attending because you were ill and you were attending from your living room.
Right, but it says, I'm getting that Joy is saying too, that the reason for your not attending is public.
Yes,
And your location.
it's public knowledge, but your dwelling isn't open to the public.
So we figured
Public
that
can't
part.
come visit your house.
Uninvited.
Never thought of that.
Other questions or comments? We did review this, I believe, back in August. Okay. No public
No
comment.
public comment, so what'll happen is next month, this will be up for council to vote to add it to current code.
Excuse me, why is it that we're waiting a month to do that?
Well, just for process period, we can vote on it right now. That's absolutely no problem.
Okay.
Typically, the reason I did that as a separate schedule was if somebody in the public makes a comment that you want to consider or have it written in,
Right.
I want to be able to write it in and then have you review it. But tonight, there's no public comment and there's no modification. There's no reason you couldn't make a motion or.
So scratch one thing off the agenda for next month.
One down.
So do we have a motion to approve Town Code Section 2-28 as submitted?
So moved.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, ladies. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of Town Code Section 228 being adopted, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Brings us to our second public hearing, which involves Town Code Section 12-1. Matt?
Again, this was discussed back in August, and what this allows us to do is the local town can declare a state of emergency, which allows for a few different options that we currently don't have. One is it allows us to apply for FEMA funding for the emergency. Then the second is that it actually allows us to create our own environment in which to operate our emergency. So an example would be during the pandemic, we would like X to happen. Even if it's not part of the overall guidelines, we can require that locally. Now, that's not the real reason for this. The primary reason is so that we can declare and manage our state of emergency in accordance with FEMA practices and then qualify for FEMA funding. The one key thing I need to be very clear is that our local emergency does not supplement or overwrite anything that the county does for us. They're still the emergency responders, and their state of emergency and their emergency responses.
And clearly, our emergency or our state of emergency cannot supersede any of those.
That's correct. And that's clearly written in the policy.
Any public comment on this proposed addition to code?
No.
Additional council comments or questions? Said we did review this a couple of months ago as well.
I mean, if you're on fire with being efficient.
I was going to say, if it's the pleasure of the council, we would certainly entertain a motion to approve this code section as presented as well.
So move.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next month's meeting's getting shorter. And that brings us to our third public hearing of the night regarding the sale of property, proposed sale of property. Matt?
Sure. There is a piece of property located on Justice Street. For those who have been around a while, it is where the old water tower was located. Currently, it's a long, narrow piece of property with a shared driveway on the left-hand side, and it goes back to where we currently store a lot of our parade platforms and some public benches and things like that. So it's an underused piece of property. What we'd like to be able to do is to sell this piece of property and use those proceeds to basically to build a few structures over behind the water tower currently, so that we can house some of our tools and equipment that we might be losing the capacity to do that once Hrsd comes and takes possession of our plant. So we have assets up there that we need to store and care for. By selling this property and constructing garages over there, we would have the ability to store that on town property after we lose the property for Hrsd. Does that make sense? Your right hand doesn't up, does it? Okay. Sold to the man in the green shirt. No. So does that make sense? So we've given all of the adjacent property owners the letter that was included with the packet. One of the things that I've done is we have an interested party, just so we all know. The interested party, I've discussed with them the fact that number 7 and number 5 Justice share that driveway, and we would need a permanent easement at no cost to those residents to continue to use that driveway. Additionally, number 7, which sits in the back closest to our barn, has requested a little parcel of the back of this property for their own use. So once we tear down the barn, they would like that. So I approached the purchaser and said, would you give a permanent easement at no cost to the owner of number 7 so they can use a small portion of this back property? And they had absolutely no issue with that.
I have a question. Is
Sure.
it an easement or is it a?
We're not replotting it.
Turn that property over to that other person. So
Yeah.
that in case they sell their property, that it goes with the land, no?
One of the things that we're talking about is a permanent easement that's going to be called out in the deed as a deed restriction. Great question, by the way. So that's what we've talked about. We've talked to the neighbors. We've talked to the purchaser. At this point, we would obviously need council's approval to move forward. So in addition to the public hearing, there's a resolution that allows me to continue the conversation about the sale of the property. Now, our policy is very clear. I cannot sign anything. All I can do is continue the conversation to the point where the policy allows for council to make the final sale and sign the deed.
Barry, you already have someone interested in the property. Does it not have to go to public sale?
Not necessarily, it can be a private sale with no issue whatsoever. We still
You
need to
don't have
make sure.
Offer it publicly first?
No, we can have a private sale.
How do we determine the purchase price?
The way we did this was because at the same time this is happening, the sale of Carnival Grounds is happening. So the parcel price that they're selling the Carnival Grounds each parcel for, I thought was fair for this, given that we know the market value,
And what is that?
30,000.
Do we have any public comment regarding the potential sale of this piece of property? Yes, ma'am, please, if you would.
Only that, I happen to be 7 Justice Street. And I just wondered, you know, I'm not concerned. I'm very happy to be able to keep that land just as land. I don't want to build anything on it. I just want to maintain it and keep it looking very natural. That's my wish. And that was why I was hoping I could have that privilege. That's all.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? So that, I guess, what you're asking from council at this point is approval of the resolution that's included in the council packet.
Correct.
Do you need to read that or?
I would say yes.
Okay. Proposed resolution of Town Council, Town of Onancock. Town Council of the Town of Onancock, Virginia, consisting of X number of members in a duly called meeting held on
26th day of
October 2020, which a quorum was present, resolved as follows. Be it hereby resolved that the Town of Onancock intends to investigate the possibility of disposing of real estate owned by the Town of Onancock, identified as tax map ID 85A2-A-158 in accordance with the Code of Virginia, Section 15.2-1800, and be it further resolved that the town manager of the Town of Onancock be authorized to proceed on behalf of the Town Council the above referenced transaction in accordance with Town Code Section 2.2-3, execution of deeds and instrument signing of checks. This resolution is hereby entered into the permanent minutes of the meetings of this Town Council. That is the proposed resolution. I guess we would need a motion to approve the resolution as submitted.
I move that we approve the resolution.
A second.
Thank you, ladies. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We'll get it done. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a motion to accept the written bid from Mertech Inc., which was our successful bidder for the properly published and executed sealed bid process for the Onancock Wharf Boat Ramp renovations project. Do you want to give us a quick overview of what happened there?
We hired JW Salm Engineering Company to put together bid documents. They put together the bid documents. They were reviewed by the Waterfront Committee. We put it out to bid for a sealed bid that was to come back on October 8th. We received one bid from the public. We checked the references and the technical qualifications of the contractor. The letter from the engineer supporting the bid and the contractor was included in your packet. So I am recommending to council that we accept the bid written by Mertech Inc. There's a motion in there that includes the specifics for what portion of their bid we'll be accepting and what portion we will not be accepting. You should know that the amount of $227,000, which includes the contingency, the performance bond, and the base project, falls $2,000 over our budget of $225,000. We strongly recommend that you move forward, given that this project isn't going to get any cheaper and we're already out for permit. The $2,000 we can easily find inside of our operating budget.
This does come to council with the endorsement of the waterfront committee that discussed it last week.
Is there any penalty to the provider of the service if they do not perform in a timely fashion? And is there a monetary penalty attached to that?
That's what the performance bond does for us. It gives us protection on the performance of the bid as written. So even though Mertac is a high quality contractor, we're still going to require the performance bid for that very reason. If for any reason they can't or don't comply with the exact terms and specifications of the bid, the performance bid compensates the town.
Performance bond.
Bond, I'm sorry, thank you.
And that bond is paid for by the contractor, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Questions of council regarding the bid process or the bid that was received? As said, time is of the essence, and this falls close enough within our budgeted costs that we feel like we do want to move forward. It's a very reputable company, the same company that put the floating docks in several years ago, so we have experience with them and their quality of work. There's no further comment. I would entertain the motion contained in your council packet. I probably shouldn't make it since I'm standing in for Fletcher.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the bid received from Mertac Inc. Of Salisbury, Maryland, that was received in response to the town's invitation for bid number 2020-09 Onancock Wharf Ramp renovations. The amount of the award and contract shall include the base project, contingency, and performance bond totaling $227,000. The town of Onancock does not accept the bid for the add alternate project.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, let's get that deal in. That brings us to a discussion of the town manager and chief's plan for the 3-year plan for the police department. Matt?
Yeah. So in your packet, you'll see a few different pages. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them and talk through it with, I've had the pleasure having a conversation with a couple of council members about this. The purpose of us doing a 3-year plan for each of our major departments, the police department, the wharf, the admin, the water, and the Department of Public Works, we're going to be doing those over the next few months so that you can start to see what goals we have for each of those areas, the goals that we're going to try to accomplish and achieve over the next 3 years, understanding that our budget can't move as adeptly and materially as we would like. So the goals are going to be achieved over a 3-year period. So that's why what we're looking at when you look at the financial performance is we go back from 2018 through 19 and 20, then we look at our budget for 2021, and then we look at projected 22, 23, and 24. So where we've been and where we're going. And we need to be thinking about all of these things strategically as part of who we are as a town and what our financial and fiduciary responsibilities are. So I'm going to talk through the data, but the chief is here to talk about the whys. Okay, so I'll talk about how we came up with the numbers. He and I work very closely together to arrive at this. He's done honestly most of the work. All I did was compile it in a form to report to you guys. So I'm going to go through each of the pages, but then any questions that you have about the operations or any of the reasonings behind any of those things, please feel free to talk with Chief Williams. He's here and he's happy to have the conversation. What we've looked at for revenue for the police department is really nominal. We get some money from the state and we get some money for traffic stops. None of those is going to materially change over these next few years. In fact, they're going to dip slightly, but not materially. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on revenue from the police department. The big expense for the police department, and really any department, is the wages. If you go to the next page where it has the police wages, taxes, and benefits, and it lists out each position within the department, I want to walk through a little bit about how that was put together and what the numbers mean, so that then you can start to see why we have the numbers that we have and the direction that we're going. First of all, Chief Williams went and spoke to all of his colleagues around the shore. So we have comparable wages by position for all of the local agencies on the shore. That's been presented to you in the packet. Then we said we put it in a range so that each position was presented in a range. So for example, the current compensation for the chiefs around the shore ranges from $60,000 to $80,000. The goal that we've set out is that we would like our police department to be compensated in the top third of shore agencies. Not at the very top, but clearly not at the very bottom. So that's the goal. Whether you agree with that goal or not, that's obviously up for your discussion. But I just put it out there as a starting point for conversation. So our goal is that our police officers would be paid in the top third of shore police agencies. If we look at the current compensation for the other agencies on the shore, and then sort of extrapolate it for the next 3 years to say if those officers receive a 2.5% cost of living raise over the next 3 years, the range of their salaries in 2024 is going to be, for a chief, it would be between $64,600 and $86,000. If we want our officers to be in the top third, that would mean our chief would be roughly $80,000. If that makes sense, then you can understand how we got there for each level of the officers in our department. Go ahead, Megan.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Where are we now in what position? And you're saying top
We're-
third and
We're just about the lowest. So our chief currently earns, this is public data, I hate doing it in public, but our chief currently earns $60,424. The lowest on the shore is $60,000. So we're right at the low. Given the incidents that we have in time and the work that they are honestly doing to protect us, I think that that's far too low. I think that being top third is a very reasonable goal. I don't think we need to be the top, but I also don't think we need to be the bottom. Yes.
I just want to just make a point that when I went to a VML conference, and one of the things was, one of the meetings was a police chief who came in to talk to us and said, would you go running down a dark alley after someone with a gun for $25,000? And no one in the room raised their hand. So it's about being comparable, it's about being compensated, and it's about being there for what the job calls for.
It's also about risk management, because one of our largest risks would be employment risk. And losing an officer for a few $1,000s doesn't make any sense when hiring a new officer, the training for which would cost upwards of $20,000.
Exactly.
So not only do we want to be comparable, but we also want to be competitive so that we don't lose people to just a marketplace change. So if you can see what we did with the chief as an example, currently earns 60. We say in 3 years we want him to be top third, not the top. So that would put him at 80. So between now and then, he would need that market adjustment. We're not going to do it all at once. We're going to take bite-sized pieces, but we want to get there toward that goal. We want to do that with all the levels of the officers, so you can see whether it's a supervisor, a straight-up officer, a parole or a probation officer, or a non-probation officer. We want to be competitive in this, and that's what we've allowed for you to see here, what the current compensation ranges are, where they would be in 3 years if they all got cost of living ranges, and what we're going to need to do in order to bring our officers up to that level.
So this includes the cost of living percentage plus,
It wouldn't be plus, it would be inclusive of that. So if we're making a market adjustment, the example might be, we'll keep hammering on the chief because he's sitting here. I'm sure he enjoys this. We're going to say that in year one, we're not going to go from 60,000 to 80,000. We're going to take a step there. We're going to say we'll go from 60 to 65. Well, the $5,000 is well in excess of a cost of living adjustment of 2%. So that would be inclusive, his market adjustment would be inclusive of a cost of living.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay. Everybody still good? Okay, so that's the compensation part of the model. 3 years out, this is where we want to take our officers, that type of thing. The next line item that I think is worth talking about is training. Currently, we spend about $6,500 a year on training. What that will obviously continue to get our certifications in place, but in the climate that we're living right now, I think there's opportunity for us to enhance the training of our officers a little bit more. So what I'm saying is we're going to increase our budget, but also increase the type of training that we're going to be expecting of our police department. That might include everything from, community policing, socioeconomic and diversity training, gang eradication, that type of thing that we can work toward some of the solving of the problem in a way that honors and reflects the current environment of the world we live in. So yes, the budget's going up, but that's the reason. Some of the other things that are worthy of mention are the uniforms, vehicle repair. I just think that our police department and our police officers drive around in their car all day. It ought to be safe. We ought to have tires that are replaced every 30 to 30,000 miles. We need to have brake jobs on these things. The oils need to be changed on a regular basis. So proper preventive maintenance on our cars. Plus I put in one major repair of $2,000 a year. I don't know. If a tie rod breaks, we're going to need to get it fixed, that type of thing. So that's what I put in there for vehicle repair. For uniforms, we did some research. Chief did some research on what is a fair way to start accounting for and providing for uniforms for our officers. He came up with an idea, and it's well found out in the community that says we do $50 per month per officer, and then allow them to purchase his or her own uniforms with that stipend. That seems to be a thoughtful way to do it, consistent among everybody, and honestly easy to budget for. So that's.
And are there requirements that to say that shirt is raggy? I'm asking the chief.
For our policy, it look proper, which it means is if I don't like it, you have to replace it.
Okay.
One thing that we have found out is the patches is what's killing the uniforms. The patches, for some reason, fade out to a pinkish color. The uniforms are polyester for the most part, so they kind of last.
Are they dry cleaned or washed? And is that why the patches are fading?
No, it's from wash machines. And it's
So it's
well water, actually. You can tell who's on a town water system and who isn't by looking at their patches.
Wonderful opportunity to market town
Yeah,
water right
yeah.
now.
Which shocks me because the town patches do not fade. The well does. So,
All included in the cost of your water, folks.
Okay, so the answer is when the chief says if the uniform needs replacement, it gets replaced.
yes, and we have some officers that wear their not dressy uniforms more when they work at night because they're not seen as often. So yeah, we try to do what we can not to have to replace them, so our need to be replaced.
Well, I've never seen anyone looking shabby. That just so.
They usually get torn. We had, for example, the past week, I had 2 officers tear their pants going in windows. So now I got my 2 pairs of pants. So it does happen. I mean, odds and ends. So.
Thank you.
The last and probably most material and significant conversation that we need to have is about vehicle replacement. We have 5 officers, and each work extensively in his or her own vehicle. We want to make sure that we've got a vehicle replacement strategy that keeps our equipment safe and keeps replenishing it at a timely period. So Chief and I talked and thought replacing each vehicle after between 100 and 120,000 miles made sense. At that point, it's roughly every 5 years. So every 5 years, we replace the car. We have 5 officers, 1 every year, basically is how it rotates through. Currently, I showed you the inventory of our cars right now. We have 1 that, well, quite frankly, the odometer is broken. We have no earthly idea how many miles are on it. Seems it's a 2006, so in all likelihood, it's got plenty. Then the other is a Dodge Charger, and the Dodge Charger has been a reliability issue for us. So Chief and I put our heads together trying to figure out, is there a way that we can replace both of these pieces of equipment and not bankrupt the town? So I went to USDA. USDA, they're the federal agency who funds and finances police cars. I don't know why, that's just who does it. They issued grants based on our size, our population, where they would offer a grant of 35% of the cost of a police vehicle. Okay, so 35% can be granted by USDA. USDA also does a lending offer where we could borrow the remaining 65%. So we get a grant for 35%. We get a car payment for the other 65%. Currently, USDA lending is at 2.125%. I can't see it going any lower. So if we wanted to replace those 2 cars now, USDA's fiscal year begins October 1st. It's a first come, first served basis. I would like to get in line now, please, to see if we couldn't get the grant and the lending. Now, the way that the timing works is it probably wouldn't be awarded until February. So we're going to have a little bit of waiting to do. We've got to raise our hands, let them know it's our intent to apply now so that we can get in the queue and hopefully be awarded the grants for both vehicles. And then obviously we would qualify for the lending, for the loan for each of these. The mercilessly small font that I included in the packet. The reason it is like this is because I wanted to show you what the replacement strategy would look like over the replacement cycle for a car over 2 cycles. So basically, this is a 10-year analysis that says I have the Crown Vic that we're going to replace now, and in 5 years, I'm going to replace it again. So that's what this shows you. I'm never going to present something this small again. I just wanted you to see how it worked for the car going through 2 life cycles and how we're going to pay for it. Because the grants of 35% aren't guaranteed, I made an assumption that we would get 3 out of 5 grants for each one. So out of every 5 times we ask, I assume we'll get 3. I don't know whether that's good or that's bad. I had no knowledge other than the fact that I just needed to put an assumption on paper. So not every one of our loans would be for 65%. Sometimes they would be for 100%. That's what this spreadsheet shows, is the assumption that we're not going to get every grant, the assumption that over years the interest rates are going to rise again, and what the impact is at our worst possible time, when we have all 5 cars that are out and we have a loan against each of them. What does that look like compared to our budget? And if you look at it, it is actually the same as the way we currently fund the cars, which is we pay cash of 65% and we get the grant for 35%. So the same dollar amount that we invest currently for a car replacement would be our worst case in cash flow. Up to that point, we have 4 years where we're actually significantly less than that, but we're still replacing cars every year. Yes, Nicholas?
5-year-old vehicle, is it junk?
That's what I was going to ask. What happens to the cars? Yeah.
Well, next month, you're going to be receiving a conversation about the wharf, and one of the ways that we're going to be able to time through and continue to recycle some of our vehicles is using a courtesy vehicle down at the wharf. You're going to have a full presentation next month about how common that is, but that's like the Crown Vic. It's never going to stop running. So let's take advantage of the fact that we've got a car that can make us have a really great amenity for the town and not cost us anything in the meantime. So is it junk? I'm saying we will occasionally cycle one back in for this type of purpose. I don't see us doing anything other than offering it as a trade-in value down the road, but occasionally we're going to have other uses.
Do you have, okay, is that the norm for police car trade-in value? And you're saying to me it's a 5-year-old vehicle, and what's the mileage and what's the damage to it? You know, usually not bad in 5 years running around this town.
Well, we would hope, but you have to keep in mind, there's still going to be 120,000 miles on this car. These officers live in those cars.
My car is 120,000 miles, piece of cake.
I hope that that's true.
In the past, have we traded these vehicles in, Chief, on the new, at the trade-in value?
Yes, the last two we had, because they were such poor shape, honestly, I was scared to sell them. And the dealership gave us $1,000 for them.
Right.
First one was 1,000, I think the second was 2,000, and they scrapped them. They were parted out.
And you got a better value on the trade-in?
Yeah, because the cars are just worn. Police cars are considered, even if you take a spectacular car with no dents in it, no damage, it runs great, they are considered to be next to destroyed when you trade them in because of what they're used for. You figure this car sits idling, and then the officer is after somebody doing 50 or 60, so how fast does the officer go from a dead stop to catch that car? And the bumps and, you know, they get through a lot even in town here, especially in towns actually. Because we don't get
So
noticed.
you think they're abused enough not to be worth anything?
Some of them are still, it depends on the car. Chargers, no. Chargers, when we get rid of them, they are done most of the time. Our current Charger, we've patched it for now, but it's got $3,000 approximately needed to repair just the steering. The steering is going bad. I'm not going to spend $3,000 on it.
So is that a bad vehicle to buy from the beginning?
If I had my choice, I would never buy another one.
So how do you avoid that? I mean, I know there are certain cars that you just know better than to buy.
The best police cars are Crown Vic.
The best what?
The Crown Vic was the best car, and they're not making them. The only choices we have as far as cars is a Charger. That's the only one left.
Because it's replaceable. Because you have to replace it.
What we're looking at is if you look at the cost of the cars that we put down, 47,000 is the least expensive car that we're looking at, and that's an SUV style that 3 of our vehicles are currently.
Right.
So
then, I mean, I'm just saying, you won't be buying a Charger and then.
no, we would be buying probably the SUVs, and then if we can take advantage of it in town to give us more than the value of the trade-in, then we will. If we can get a better value trading the vehicle in to offset the cost of the future car, we will. You know, we're going to do what's best for the cash flow of the town. We're not just going to. So I don't know what the remaining book value of these is going to be. I don't know what the vehicles are going to go through over the next 5 years, but given the condition of the current cars, I think 5 years is a reasonable assumption. It's also the longest term that USDA will finance a police vehicle because they know the same thing the chief just said, is that they are used well by the time the 5 years runs out, and they don't want to have a loan out there for a car that doesn't have any book life left. All right. So all of that being said, now we can come back to the top cover sheet and we can see what the town invests in our police department. So what we're saying currently is that just the operating expenses or the revenue in excess of expenditures we budgeted currently was about $292,000 in cost. In order to do the staffing primarily and the increased training and the proper equipment purchases, we're going to go from 292 currently out to 451 in 2024. So that's why, first of all, we're having this conversation so you can start to see what the cost moving forward is with some of these conversations that we're having. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, nobody's asking for a decision tonight. Nobody's looking for opinions. I really want to make sure that you take advantage of the fact that the chief is here, and that if you have any questions about the operations of the department or any of the reasons that we have what we have or the direction that we're going, it's a perfect opportunity to ask him.
I have a question. First of all, I want to say thank you, because of you guys, we sleep at night and feel safe in this wonderful center. Do you need more officers? Do you feel you have enough?
One more would be nice, honestly.
Why would that be nice?
Because if you sit down and look at what we work, what they're doing, I average 6 months without one of the positions we currently have due to vacations, injuries, sick, and it never fails. When one's out for a while, 2 more fall. Recently, I've had 2 out with injuries, and then a COVID popped in there, possible COVID test. So it was down to 2 of us, and we were just and. When something happens with 2 of you, you find yourself running in circles. Yes, past week we had a B&E. It took 3 of us 13 hours. We were there for 13 hours doing different processes in this. What you're paying for when you have us also is, I had to tell them to go home. We were done and they were still looking for more. It's a time. You've been here at 7 a.m. and it's midnight. It's time to stop. It's past 2 weeks, I've had 2 officers on the phone. I've overheard them talking to seniors. These seniors are having some issues and they think somebody's messing with them. I'll sum it up. The officer could have said, don't worry about it, bye. I mean, whatever, could blow them off. Instead, one was on the phone for 30 minutes with one and changed their outlook and calmed them down. The other officer was in their house for 20 minutes because he went to the house instead to change the situation and make them feel safe, different. So when you get the police, I'm very particular who we hire. I have sold before, and I've regretted it selling it every time. But unfortunately, we can't get the people we would want because we don't have the funding for it.
Does every police officer need a car?
Morale, yes.
No.
Imagine sharing your desk with somebody, and you take everything out or you change it around, and I come behind you and I do the same thing. For every department on the shore offers a car to their officers, except for Shinty. They're the only ones that do not, because just, I guess, I don't know why. But it's part of the package nowadays. And for morale, it makes a night and day difference. A couple of years ago, I told you, it definitely hurt us because there was officers that were checking into coming to us, and the car stopped them from coming. Yeah, it's a big thing to an officer. It's a very big thing, believe it or not. That's why you can see the ones that have their cars, most times they're very clean spots because they take pride in their vehicles. When you share a vehicle, use Kathy for example, if you don't mind. If me and her are sharing a vehicle and I leave a mess, are you going to clean it every time?
I'm gonna come talk to you about it.
Yeah, but you lose heart, you lose interest. I've actually had people not applaud because they wanted a car. So it does make a big difference.
Okay, why are the traffic fines going like from 16,000 down to 7,000?
Several reasons. One, COVID.
Why?
COVID hurt us. We were not to do much traffic enforcement unless it was something major. Because we might pass it to them or they might pass it to us. Officers were actually at high risk. So that was one reason. Second reason is in Virginia now, it used to be if you didn't pay your fine, you got suspended. Now you don't get suspended. So why do you pay your fine?
The suspended license?
Yes. So if I rate you for speeding
Right.
and you didn't pay your fine within 7 to 14 days, your license was suspended. Now you could call the court, go to the court and make payments, arrange for payments, and you were fine. Now there's no penalty for it. So no matter what we rate you for or how much you owe money to the towns or the court or whoever, there's no suspension with that penalty at all.
Wow.
And I'm not going to lie, it's going to get worse because there's some new laws coming up that we cannot stop for inspections, we can't stop for registrations. They got to be out in 3 months, I believe. If that passes, it's going to hurt us some. So.
Diversity.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult. Is it a goal?
For us, honestly, 3 years ago, yes. Now I have realized it doesn't matter black, white, green, purple. If you're a fit to the job and to the town of Onancock, I don't care what you are, you're worth hiring. Diversity is nice, yes. But we need to hire who can do the job and who can fit into the community in town. Currently, I think most of our officers will not hesitate to walk in any part of this town and talk to anybody, as far as I know. That's what we need.
Yes.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, Eric, because that's what I was wondering about when you say fit to the job, exactly what does that mean? Because I know that we have 3 officers now that I don't know. I had to ask their names. I've never met them. I don't see them walking around. I wave every time somebody goes by,
Yeah.
but then I guess I assume from way back when that people know that I'm Catherine and where I live. But now I'm pretty sure that we have 3 officers that have no idea. And I wonder, is that part of being, I understand that, and let me back up. I want to mirror Joy's comment. Thank you so much for everything that you do. Honestly,
Truly.
I mean, words are not enough to describe how much we all appreciate what you guys do. All that being said, there's got to be a part of what you do, it would seem, that incorporates all of the joy and the growth and the goodness that's happening in Onancock, and not just focusing on all of the stuff that makes your job as challenging and difficult as it is. So how does that fit when you say someone fit for Onancock?
Well, part of the reason, back up to you not seeing on this, we have actually, and I will take the responsibility. We have certain officers who work day shift, some that work night primarily. I mean, yes, you'll see certain ones, but not others. So that's part of the reason I'll work on. But as far as fitting in Onancock is, I don't want anybody's going to react without thinking, and that's the hardest problem now. Instead of thinking about the situation, there's a reaction, and then there's a follow through. If there's a crime, follow to the end. And some officers won't do that. Once they take their report, they're done, no matter what it is. Being community. Like I said, as far as I know, all of them probably any neighborhood say hi. They know their people's names, they know their kids, they know their families, they know their backgrounds, they know their pets' names. You have a cute dog. I've been told several times. That's what I mean. I'd rather have an officer with less knowledge about the job that's not scared to call me at 2 o'clock in the morning to ask the questions, to react. That it fits into the community. Granted, you may not see them every time, but I don't think they'll be ruder. They'll say hi.
Right.
And that's what the goal is.
Wonderful.
Yes. And they can learn as they go.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, I've been a pest in your slide for a while, but I can say this much, that I know that every time I've ever called the police, you were there.
Mhm.
When we had trouble in the neighborhood, you were there. And I mean, it was horrible, but thank God that part passed. But then last year, I called you. I rode all over town to try to find you because someone's water thing was busted and water was running. And everybody in the neighborhood was concerned because they had no pressure. And then I remembered to call ACMAC. Less than 5 minutes after I called ACMAC, you were there. And you turned that water off for me. 2 doors from me. It wasn't at my house.
Yeah.
But you were there, and I appreciate that. But there's only one policeman that ever stops to talk to the children in our neighborhood or anything, and that's the female policeman. In fact, Saturday, the little kids were telling her, the little girls were telling her, they wanted to, when they grew up, they wanted to be a policeman like her, and they liked her car. And, I mean, and it was amazing to watch how they responded, because most children are afraid of policemen. But we really do need something in this town, maybe in the spring, if this COVID settles down or whatever, where we can bring children and adults, everyone together, so we can have a community thing, so they can get to know the people. Because I'm gonna tell you something, every neighborhood is not safe. We went for 3 peaceful years in my neighborhood, and now we're starting it all over again. You know what I mean? And I pray that it doesn't get as bad as it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was running up my driveway and a bullet went over my head, right into the house next door. You know, so it's not something that somebody told me, something that actually happened. And I had to call the police again because we didn't find the bullet till a week later. You know, but like I said, we need the police, and yes, we really need a sixth policeman, a person, so that they can come in the neighborhood, and I don't care what color they are. You know,
Yep.
I don't think any black person would do any better than the white, because I can, when I first came back to Virginia, they had a black chief policeman here. Tried to talk to him, you know, you can be friendly, but you can't be buddies, because it's a job. And he wouldn't listen. He would not listen. And that's why they had to relieve him of his responsibility. We know that you have a job. We don't expect you to be our best friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
But we expect that you appreciate us and support us and care about what happens to us just as much as you do anywhere in this town.
Yeah.
And that's what we appreciate.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
And I will work on it.
Yes.
We're gonna look.
Yeah,
into
like
it.
I said,
Yeah.
I can't
Believe it or not, we got-
forget her name, but she.
Kim Whitlock.
Kim. She don't, when she waves, you know, she, like I said, the children still start waving, she'll stop if no one's behind her and talk to them and everything. And that's what they need. They need not to know to fear the policemen. They need to know that they're there to protect them.
Yeah, I agree.
As community policing, do they ever walk through the neighborhoods there?
We have to time it when we, yes, they do. And it has to be timed when there's at least 2 or 3 on, because our radios, and they got responder calls too. So if you're pretty far from your car out, and something happens, you gotta be able to get back to it. But yes, they do.
Yep.
No, there's only so much we can do about our signs.
That I would assume, obviously, this dovetails with the budget pretty dramatically. So is the next step that you will come back to us as we approach the budget?
Yeah,
period
after we,
with ideas as to how to incorporate this, assuming council's on board?
right, and we're gonna do this for each of the major departments. So next month, we're gonna talk about the wharf, and then the month after that, I'm hoping we'll have really good information about water, because we'll know what's happening with Hrsd. Then we'll get into the admin side, and then it'll be budget cycle time. So at that point, we'll have reviewed the 3-year plans for all of our major departments. Then we're gonna start going into our budget cycle, and we'll be able to naturally fold this in. So that's the plan.
Makes sense.
So then, I'm happy to continue the conversation, but I'm also aware of time. So the 3-year plan, we've presented it, you've had an opportunity to talk to Chief. The only thing that I'm actually needing from you folks, in order for me to go back and get in line at USDA, I actually need you to adopt the resolution that's included in your packet. There's also one other step that you're going to see. The first, obviously, you'll vote on this this resolution. That all it does is simply allow me to let USDA know that it is our intent to apply. Also, we have to advertise in our local paper that it is our intent to apply. Once they see the advertisement and they see the resolution, then we get in line. Make sense?
Okay.
If there are no further questions, I will read the resolution into the minutes. Resolution of governing body of Town of Onancock, the Town Council of the Town of Onancock, consisting of 6 members, in a duly called meeting held on the 26th day of October 2020, at which a quorum was present, resolved as follows. Be it hereby resolved that in order to facilitate obtaining financial assistance from the United States of America, United States Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, the government, in the purchase of police vehicles and equipment, the governing body does hereby adopt and abide by all covenants contained in the agreements, documents, and forms required by the government to be executed. Be it further resolved that the town manager of the Town of Onancock be authorized to execute on behalf of the town council the above referenced agreements, documents, and forms, and to execute such other documents, including but not limited to debt instruments, security instruments, and/or grant agreements as may be required in obtaining the said financial assistance. This resolution is hereby entered into the permanent minutes of the meetings of this town council.
One thing I need to chime in at, we have a local policy, it's section 2-3, that limits my ability to sign any lending facilities, deeds, or, so we're going to comply with our local policy insofar as signing debt instruments. So while this would give me the authority, our policy makes the mayor the person responsible for that, just so you know.
Do we have a motion to approve the resolution as submitted?
So moved.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, ma'ams. Any further discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Matt, that brings us to
Thank you.
trash collection fees, utility billing, etc.
All right, so these, the next two items, just to be clear, I'm asking Chief to remain. The last item is item number 11, which is a closed session. We are actually asking that we have a closed session, and Chief is going to attend with us to talk through a personnel matter. Okay, all right. The next three items are discussions about staff recommended changes in town code. So again, there's no voting on this. This is for your review, consideration, conversation. Two of the codes that we have in place are relating to water, sewer, billing, and adjustments. Lisa's the person who's responsible for the town for all of those procedures. So she and I have gone through and created these policies together, but specific questions that you have, like you just asked the chief, we're probably going to direct those to Lisa. So that you know. So the first batch of code is the trash collection, utility, disconnection, and private sewage. So the current code is the top 3 pages, and then I've got a strike bold copy with the underlined portions as the recommended changes to the code. I'm not going to go through it line by line. It's incredibly lengthy. But what the goal was to take our current operations and reflect them more accurately in our code. Because what was happening is there were some assumptions being made about why we do certain things when and how we do certain things and what we do for people and what we don't do for people. And I wanted those to be really clearly defined in our town code. They were touched on in the current code, but the details that I provided in the proposed code, I think spell it out a little bit more clearly on how we calculate averages, how we'll make adjustments, what water rates we're going to use for those adjustments. Now, there are two, I'm going to say, material changes. They relate to rates, so different rates for different folks. The rates that we assign for currently our first responders, the fire department, they don't have a meter. So we don't know how much water they use, and they obviously don't get charged for anything because we don't have a meter. Our bond for the water requires that all users of water are charged. Well, we obviously honor the work that our fire department does incredibly, but I had to come up with a number. So I came up with a first responder rate, and that is 0.0001 per gallon. It's listed out there, so even if they used 1 million gallons, it would come back at a very small number. But we have to charge them something, and we have to monitor their use according to our bond covenants. That's the intent of that rate. It's not to generate money. It's not to do anything to the fire department other than support them with full-throated support.
And it affects the armory as well.
It does, and there's actually a question on whether or not they should get first responder rate because they're not first responders. So we can go either way on that one, and I think that's where the discussion point would come: is should we offer them that rate? Should we not? We need to put a meter in there because they use water.
Right.
I don't think they're using a lot of it, so I don't think it's going to be a material conversation because they're empty most of the time.
But it's a right and wrong kind of thing. It's an equity kind of thing.
I tend to agree with
I
you.
would think a meter should be there.
Yep.
And I don't think it should be as the same rate as first responders because they're not.
Right, and I think that's why we're having the discussion tonight. So what I would do based on what you just said was next month when we go for public hearing, I would alter the staff recommended language to say that the first responder rate is for the fire department, period. And the armory doesn't have to be part of the policy. We just know that any user of water must have a meter.
Why are we questioning or why don't they have a meter, A? And B, who are they? I mean, federal, state, what is the state?
It's the,
Yeah, with
And
the state.
what are they to us?
I think they're the State National Guard.
Right, so.
Yeah.
So is that just another clubhouse over there?
I don't think,
No.
Ms. Gillespie
We're
said,
here doing the last Friday.
I'm just teasing about that being a clubhouse. Sorry.
I have a question.
My
Are
bad.
they currently paying a rate at the Armory?
no, there's no water meter.
Oh,
That's what I'm asking.
okay.
That's what I'm asking.
So I wanted to
But the
make
fire
sure,
department does.
no, they don't have a meter.
No,
That was built, and Lisa can correct me, but it was built as a town property, which we subsequently deeded over to the fire company. So as a town property, there was probably never a meter installed because the town didn't envision billing itself for water. But as Matt indicated, the bonds are very clear in that we have an obligation to charge every user,
something.
which would include the armory and the fire company.
So that's the one change. The other change is a rate that I called the supported senior or disabled rate. One of the things that I'm hearing over the last 126 days is that our water costs are high, and I've got an analysis coming your way that's actually pretty telling. But some folks are having trouble paying their water bill. And some of the folks who are having trouble are older, on fixed incomes. It just doesn't feel right that that's where we're making our money. So what I'm suggesting is that the county has a senior or disabled tax relief program. And anyone who is part of that program, I would suggest that we give a 75% discount on their water rate. First of all, the question is, well, how can we afford that? We're talking about maybe 10 people. So this isn't a huge volume of users. I think it's just simply the right thing to do. And I don't think it's going to cost us very much to do it. So that's why I put it in here, for no other reason other than we know folks are having trouble. We know we can help them. We know we don't have to administer it, which I think is also really important. We're not going to our seniors and saying, you have to provide your age and you have to provide your tax returns. They do that at the county level to qualify for this tax relief program. The county notifies us of who is participating in that program. We can then go into their water bill, assign them that senior rate, and be done.
Great.
So that's why I put it in there. Other than that, there's some language about how we calculate averages and how we, that type of thing. It's mind-numbing when you really read it, but I wanted it to be clearly stated so that when someone's looking for an adjustment, it's clear on how we're calculating the volume. The other thing that is new in here is the rate that we assign for leaks, okay? It's one of the things that it's been very problematic. One of the first days I was here, there was somebody who didn't live locally who had a leak they didn't know about until we handed them a $16,000 water bill. Okay, that is a dramatic story, but it's not unique. It's not unique. And it's also not infrequent. We have tenants who have leaks that are under their houses that the landlords haven't fixed that we're giving bills to. And so what we did was we created a policy that said for leak adjustments, these are the steps that we're going to take. So we've got the first thing we do is if you have a high water bill, we're going to go and we're going to monitor your meter. And what monitoring your meter means is that we're going to go to your property when no one's using the water, and we're going to see if the meter's spinning. If the meter's spinning and no one's at home using the water, then you have a leak. Now, the next thing is, do you want us to turn the water off while you fix this leak, or do you want us to leave it on? So we addressed that. Then the next thing is it a leak of what we're calling accessible plumbing? An example of that would be a toilet, a sink, an appliance, something that you are in control of that also uses the sewer. Okay, so a toilet, for example, a leaking toilet drains out and drains into the sewer. So that's an accessible leak, and it goes into, it drains into the sewer. I mean, there's nothing.
It's not processed water.
It's still, but it still has to be
It
processed.
still goes through, but it's, okay.
And it still has to be processed just like gray water does. So it goes through the system. Stay with me though, because we're going to get right on this. Hold on. Okay. Then there's the next one that's an inaccessible leak. A leak under your house, a leak in the yard. You don't know that it's there. All of a sudden you get this monster water bill. You're like, I have no idea. We go, we monitor. It spins while nobody's home. Clearly there's a leak. You've looked through the house. There's no appliance leaking. There's no toilet leaking. So it's determined that the leak is somewhere that's not accessible. That leak's not using the sewer system. So the first thing we're going to do is go through the calculation that's in here to calculate how we're going to adjust that bill. So we're not going to charge you for the sewer when the water didn't go through the sewer. Does that make sense?
Yes, because that happened to one of the people in my neighborhood.
It happens all the
And
time.
The leak ended up being in the wall.
Yeah.
And, but unfortunately, the town manager at that time refused to hear anything. And we even had the local pastor to, he sat down with a group of people at Clint's church. And then he came and he spoke with the manager because they didn't know where the leak was coming from. But the leak ended up being in the wall of the house, but still he insisted they pay the sewage, whole water and sewage.
Right.
You know, but it wasn't their fault.
Right, and that's what we're trying to address, because the number of stories that come before us that says, you know, I didn't know. We didn't know it was there until you gave us this bill. So we want to be able to work with people in a way that's just, I mean, yes, you use the water. But no, you didn't use the sewer. It just drained down your wall. I mean, that's tough. So that's the first adjustment. The second adjustment is clearly stated in how we're going to calculate the water cost when it's clearly an inaccessible leak. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to double the water, your normal water use, and then above that, we're going to charge what's called an incremental water rate. So what I did was I went through and calculated what the cost of a gallon of water costs that comes out of the tower without labor, without all, just what a gallon of water costs us. And that's 0.0002. So once you get over 2 times your use, a leak of an inaccessible plumbing, above that is going to get charged at the incremental rate of 0.0002, which is a massive savings. So I don't want to charge people for water that didn't go into the sewer, and I don't want to charge them a huge rate when it wasn't water that was used. So charging the incremental water rate, which is a very low number, but they are going to have to pay for more than normal use. So that's sort of my head fake toward a compromise, but I really think it's going to make a big difference to a lot of people. So that's the other material change.
So you're basically putting a limit on how much an inaccessible charge can be.
Yes.
And what would be like maximum 300?
I don't have any way to know what a person's average use is. It's double. So I take their last 24 months, I take off the high, I take off the low.
And you average
The average of the 22 in the middle, and then I double that. And I say, okay, that's the amount of water we're going to charge you for. Above that is the incremental rate of 0.0002. Does that make sense? All right. The purpose behind this whole thing was to be a thoughtful, municipally owned utility company, right? I mean, we're a small town and we gotta take care of our own. We don't need to make money off catastrophe, right? They've got enough problems.
The current code says inaccessible would also be abnormal usage resulting from an exterior hose connection. Would we put that under inaccessible now?
Well, I would put that as an unusually high water use, and we address that in the new code as well.
Usually high water use.
Right.
So you would not consider it inaccessible.
No. But I also wouldn't charge you for the sewer for an exterior leak. I mean, if somebody leaves their hose on,
Well,
I-
somebody,
you know, I-
some people do and then they go away and the hose.
About a year ago, my son turned his on, never turned it off.
how'd that feel?
Boy, that huge bill.
Yeah. But
I'm
here,
seriously, it was, the hose and it went to the, irrigation system for the garden, so you couldn't detect it.
you wouldn't even know. Yeah.
So how was that being treated now?
Well, we're trying to come up with ways like that. Let me go through that scenario. I'm happy to go through the code that we've put together with that storyline and try to come up with what we would do. Does that sound fair? I mean, we're not looking for a vote tonight. We're just looking to have a conversation about it. So I'm happy to.
Calculation for that type of thing.
Yeah, I've actually got this analysis going about what the cost of a leaky toilet is and that type of thing to show you how much really that flap on your toilet is, how much that thing really does save you. By the way, it's $5 a day. Anybody that wants to know, it's $5 a day is a little leaky toilet. So that's $150 a month in water. Then add the sewer. It's crazy. Yeah, so that's the kind of little thing. We're really looking to help people, not hurt people. We've got bills we've got to pay. We've got costs we've got to cover. I just don't think we need to do it on somebody's catastrophe. That's all. That's what this is trying to accomplish. It's also trying to accomplish some continuity so that I can sit there and say, according to section 96, subparagraph Q, this is how we're going to calculate that. And we're going to do it for everybody that same way. So.
Is there still a water committee? I never saw.
Oh,
that.
absolutely. I didn't change. There's only 2 sections of the water code that's being addressed here. There's still 54 pages of water code that, you know, they're all you.
I do have a question, Matt, that
Yeah.
is not one of those 2 sections.
Okay.
But, this is something that I wonder about the town's responsibility towards an opportunity to do, and that is specific to bill paying. The town water bill comes out every other month, and it comes in the mail, and you have to write a check. I feel like I'm kind of in the dark ages. It's the only bill for my family that we get in the mail and we have to write a check for. To do the bill pay is difficult. It is, I believe there's a surcharge that is fairly high.
$3.50.
Yes. And
It's
there is,
4%.
unless I'm,
It's
yeah.
4%.
It's 4%, yeah. And unless I have missed a step, and I hope that I have, auto pay is not an option. So I think as a town have a big responsibility towards our residents to make paying our water bill easier.
Here.
Okay. That's something I can absolutely look into and come back and we can talk a little bit more about it.
Every other utility that I pay, there's no charge to pay it.
Well, and your financial institution just pays your bills. You don't actually ever even have to pay them. You go in once a month and you see everything's been paid and you're done.
And your
But not with the
cash flow.
town.
We
And so
receive checks from your bank.
I'm telling you, we've paid more late fees. We filled that budget with late fees, the Crowley family, because we just missed the darn thing. We're
People
just
pay
not-
us out of bill pay in their banks. It doesn't come electronically to
Yeah.
us. They do cut us a live hard check.
Yeah,
They
but
do
you
it
have to
that way.
go in every month and do that, what I'm saying.
They
You
do,
can't
right.
set it up so it just automatically is
You
paid.
can set it up on the online processor, but it is that 4% fee.
Yes. So auto pay, you can set it up.
You can set up
Lisa?
auto pay on the online, that government window website that you can pay online. They do.
Because when I actually called them, you and I had this conversation and I called them.
Okay.
I called the number that you gave me and spoke to a woman and she said that was not set up for our site. And then I called you back and told you that.
That,
No,
we
it's
talk
okay.
offline on it.
No, it's perfectly fine. It's just that I think that we just need to verify what actually is available and what isn't. No, you were extremely helpful. I appreciate that very much. It was just, that conversation did take place with the
I
actual
wonder how long
building
ago it
service.
was.
I'm happy to look into it. Lisa and I can work together and come back with options.
Thank
I
you.
mean, maybe we'll have one, maybe we won't, but at least we'll have informed
Okay,
conversation.
thank you.
Okay.
Now I just have one more
Please,
thing on this,
go.
I'm sorry. But there was a question, or the volunteer fire department in the Armory and getting the 1%. What about buildings or things that the town owns or town is associated with?
You know, you mentioned that before the meeting and I forgot to bring it up. I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay, but go
So what MAPIS is referring to is having a rate for town-owned buildings. So that would be, you know, the school,
across the board.
the blacksmith shop, anything across the board. Sorry?
Little Lakefield.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing. So what we should probably do is have another rate model that talks about those buildings that the town owns. So that way we're consistent across all of them. I think it's a deeper conversation because some people pay rent, other people don't pay rent, other people raise money, other people don't raise money. I think some, you know, you look at the Little League, you know, there's all kinds of nuances. I think it's a good conversation to have.
Create a policy that's consistent with whatever you do. That's all I'm asking.
I think that's
I don't know that we can change some of that because like some of those properties under like a 30 or 40-year contract or.
I'm not asking you to change I'm asking that everybody have a policy, that there be something in place for each one of these, every entity that we have, that we're involved in.
got it. So, you know, next month, that's going to come forward for a public hearing rather. So this document will go out in the agenda next month for public hearing, okay? The next item is the vehicle license decals, to cut to the chase. And what we're proposing is that we eliminate selling decals that are due, you know, blah, 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 up through April, and we just simply add the rate to the personal property tax return that the county currently monitors anyway. It's in all likelihood, it's going to be a material increase in our revenue because so few of our residents actually pay for their decals. So, you know, currently, how many decals did we sell this year?
Less than 400.
Less than 400, but I've got the tax rolls in, and we have about 1,300 vehicles in town that would be, you know, that would be taxable. So in all likelihood, we're gonna increase the revenue from this line item, and we're also gonna make it a little bit more user-friendly and stop reaching our hand out constantly to taxpayers and doing one more thing. So that it's, again, trying to be a little bit more friendly, but at the same time, we're probably gonna be more equitable between residents.
Well, I think it's a good idea because it makes sure it gets paid. I mean, it's there and it's got to be paid. But I do have a question about in this current code or in the current code, it's the personal property bill and it goes November to December. And then I think somewhere it was March to April. Why are you putting this in December?
Well, we bill in November for that year's taxes. The decals run from April 15th to April 15th.
Right.
So this would be a change, it would be a proration on that first year because we'd already, people's decals that will expire April 15th of 2021. The personal property taxes run January to December 31st of 2021. So there'll be a slight proration for that year since they already paid for 4 months of a decal.
Is there currently a penalty for not having a decal, chief?
Yeah.
And what is it?
$30 fine.
Because historically, how did we get these decals? Was it to, because people say to me, I don't park downtown.
We
I
don't
don't need
want.
one.
I can't hear you.
I don't park downtown. I don't need one.
Oh,
So how did we come about with the decals?
It used to be, how did it come about? I
Yeah.
don't know how it came about.
it's a
Just
tax.
everybody did it.
It's
The
a
county
tax.
had a decal forever, and they went to this system probably 15 years ago now, a
It's a
long time
tax,
ago.
yeah.
So there is precedent, at least in Accomack County, that everybody has had to have a vehicle decal forever.
Wasn't it rough that the county would charge it if we didn't? So
Yes.
therefore, we charge it and that way we get the
The
revenue.
revenue. Now, will we pick up boat trailers and utility trailers in this as well, since those
Not for
require the decals?
decals, no, this is just for motor vehicles.
Okay, so anybody who has a boat trailer would still need to come in and.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, that's the way that the decal conversation is going with the county for that is, and this hasn't been, the supervisors have not formally adopted this. So I don't want to say that this is a final decision, but in all likelihood, it's moving in the direction of when the personal property tax return includes a boat, that boat owner is going to receive some form of identification that they have a vehicle on their, or a boat on their personal property tax return. Let's say it's a mirror hanger, okay? So they get a mirror hanger sent to them in March. That's going to be good to use the ramps and the parkings in all of Accomack property. So that's probably the direction we're going to go, is that if you show up to the town ramp and you have the window hanger from the county, there's no charge to park or to use our ramp. If you don't have that, then our ramp charge we would charge for parking. So that's how that's going to work in all likelihood. But again, the supervisors haven't made it all the way through their process, so I don't want to say that's absolutely the way things are going to work, but we definitely want to take advantage of the hard work that the county has done to create this process.
This tax, this is just an out and out tax.
Yeah.
There's no value to it, there's no parking, there's nothing, there's no
It's a
reason
tax.
for it other than an out and out tax. So might as well just throw it in with the tax and be done with it.
Right, originally when they first started this, though, if that was a reason, I don't remember. I remember when they started, because I used to, back then I was coming to a town council meeting every month. And I forgot what the reason was, but that was a
It was
reason.
the county, either the county's gonna get it or the town will get it.
And what happened is all the incorporated towns on the eastern shore agreed to collect their own.
Right.
And some of them a few years ago went to that you didn't have to have the sticker, but you still had to pay the money.
Pay tax.
So we're gonna raise everybody's taxes $27 for one car, $54 for two cars.
But we're not going to charge them for the decal.
Well, that's kind of you.
Well, but it's the same fee. I mean, we're not, all we're doing is we're saying rather than get a
But you only have
decal, it's
400 people paying it.
But you're just eliminating the nuisance for me who goes in to get that done. And
And town staff.
and you will
And the
And you
administrative
will
work.
increase the revenue for those who are slacking. So-
yes, so we're going to increase our revenue, we're going to reduce the burden on the administration, and we're going to lessen the inconvenience for our residents. I'm saying that's like a triple win.
I think it is.
Okay.
Done with it.
The last conversation regarding code, this one has gone through waterfront, just so you know. And what this basically says is that our wharf is a resource for our community. Boating is part of who we are, and we want to make our facilities available to our locals, boat owners, without making it a burden. So what we've said is basically this. The slips, an unreserved slip can be used by you for up to 4 hours with no charge. please check in with the harbor master to give your contact information so that we can get in touch with you if you need to. But that's basically it. So if somebody who lives up the creek wants to come in and go to dinner, they can come in, pull into an unreserved slip, go to dinner, enjoy the downtown, get back in their boat and leave, and they don't have to worry about it. So we want to make sure that it's a resource for our entire community.
So you now have a reserve sign?
We're going to work on how we notify folks that the slip has been reserved. We've got some clever ideas that are not going to take too much manpower and too much brain matter. But that's the problem, is currently there's no way to tell if it's, without having somebody at the staff running down the wharf charging after people saying it's reserved, you can't be there. And that's not the experience we want people to have. So if there's a way that we can let them know that that slip's reserved, there are several others you can pull into, no problem, it's free. So that's the thing that we're managing right through right now. Waterfront's been through this, they've reviewed this policy. I think that they would endorse the fact that they've gone through it in detail and they've agreed to it in its entirety. So it's here for your discussion. It's gone through Waterfront, and next month we'll bring it forward for a public hearing, and then we'll adopt it later on.
But they have to give a credit card, is that right?
One of the things that raised the questions, thank you for reading it. It's one of the things that we said maybe to have a little bit of skin in the game was that at 4.5 hours, somebody else now can't use that slip. So we don't want you to take advantage of it. So is there a way that we can, we'll just say, look, at 4 hours and whatnot, we're going to charge you $5 an hour for the slip. And in order to do that, we're going to need your credit card. I don't know of another way to do it.
Could you try it without it and see if it works or if it's abused? And if it's abused,
A warning, a parking ticket, I mean, something, I'm not gonna give you my credit card before.
Well, they can't pay their bill at Mallard's without their credit card.
Well, we're not saying that we're going to hold your credit card.
Oh, you don't want the numbers from it?
Well, we have a computer system that allows us to process it and not be able to see the numbers other than the last 4. So, that was my first thought. That same question, Waterfront had the exact same. I don't have any problem with redacting it. Let's put it that way. This is not a hill worth dying on. I don't think it's going to be that important because I think you're right.
Well, the practical example that Craig gave, and I think there's some merit to this, is let's say that somebody comes in at noon and they say, I just want to go to lunch and I'll be gone in 3 hours. We've got that slip rented for the night. We know somebody's coming in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If that boat hasn't moved, then we've got another potential customer service issue with a reserved boater coming in for that. Personally, as a boater, I don't have a problem giving somebody my credit card number, knowing that I'm not going to get charged if I do what's expected of me. I'm like Nat, I don't see it a hill to die on, but I also see some practical issues if we don't get.
Call them a hotel reservation.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I like the idea that you're getting yourself in. If there is a problem, then.
Well, that's a promise. We are going to get your name and your cell number. Whether or not we grab your credit card or not, that's sort of a conversation that we can have. I don't think it's going to be a popular choice, to be quite honest with you. I think half or more than half are going to have your response, and the other half are going to have your response about it's no big deal. When I make a hotel reservation, I got to do it anyway. Like I say, this isn't something, I don't want to create conflict when the policy is here to avoid it. So can I remove it? Absolutely.
well, I think if the waterfront committee said that this is the best way to handle it, then, I could certainly go along with their recommendation.
I think what they looked at was, let's try it. If it doesn't work, we'll pull it.
Is there always someone there to make sure that there's not a problem? Isn't it manning has to be?
Yeah, if no one is staffing the wharf at that point, if somebody comes in at 6 o'clock at night and there's no boat in there and they pull in, and they're gone in 4 hours after dinner, it's no harm, no foul. So that's why I'm saying, I don't want to make this into a thing.
Make it complicated.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is I just want to let people know that during the day, we need to be able to get in touch with you. At 4 hours, we are going to have to charge you. And I don't know of a way to do that without making it
$1 for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
you know, how do you get there?
So like I said, I don't have any problem with a public hearing. If it comes back with any pushback, I don't have any issue with removing it before you vote on it. Either way. Okay? Okay.
Any questions or comments? Been quite busy.
Keeps me off the streets at night.
That brings us to the section of the meeting devoted to any public comment. Do we have any members of the audience who would like to address any issues with council? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question concerning the water. Come up to here.
And if you state your name and your address for the record, as they say.
And give me credit card number.
It's just wrong.
My name is Teresa West Calum, and I'm at 18 Cross Street. And my concern is, as far as the water bills are concerned, I know you touched on it earlier, that we do sometimes have payment plans for those who haven't struggled, maybe paying their payments or whatever. Had a payment plan, we paid the payment plan, and my due date was tomorrow, and my water got cut off today. So I don't understand if I can just, maybe it was something that I missed, like you have my letter that says due date 10/27, which is tomorrow. And I got home today and my water was off. So I don't, I just was trying to figure out what was going on. And I do have the receipt from the payment that was paid where I had a payment plan, which was paid on last week, on Friday. It was paid 15th, which was due. And then this bill is saying due on the 22nd.
I know that Mary Ellen, the lady that works up front, reached out to everybody last Tuesday and Wednesday to let them know that the date was actually going to be on the 26th. I believe she spoke to somebody. Her notes are over there. I'd be happy to look at them after the meeting if you'd like. I think you had a payment plan there, but I wasn't sure that I don't know, did you put a down payment on it to start the payment
My
plan?
husband has paid it, and I have the receipt of being paid, and the
Okay.
balance that's due is what's on the letter that I received as well.
Without looking at your account, I'll be happy to do that with you when we adjourn, if you'd like to go over there and do that. That way I can fix it for you in the morning, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Teresa.
Thank you.
And apologize for the inconvenience that we've caused you by shutting it off.
Why was the date changed?
Well, it was a misprint in the letter. It was supposed to be today, and Mary Ellen called everybody on the list to let them know that we were going to be cutting off this go around because all of the moratoriums on disconnections had been lifted for a small period of time. And we're starting to get several people are getting severely out of compliance with keeping up with their bills. So she probably called like 65 people last week.
This kind of makes you feel like that's not very friendly. And to tell me today or 2 days ago that you're going to change the date is still not healthy. You have to fight that one. You have to just eat it because that's a mistake on not the person's part, but our part.
Yes, ma'am.
Supposed to know the letter.
Other public comments? You can see around the corner.
No, sorry.
That's okay, it wasn't you.
You just call me fat. That's all right.
Committee reports, Hrsd, I have no report unless there's an update that you want to give regarding.
No, I've had a couple of conversations with Ted Hennepin, the CEO of Hrsd, about what steps we need to take to move forward. They owe me a draft of a proposed contract. I'm now going to be working with their CFO tomorrow to go through and create a budget for rating for some of the wastewater treatment for some of the Nassawadox facility, and then they're going to be able to draft that agreement, and then we'll have it reviewed by council. So we are moving forward, I think, very well.
Excellent. And then once that agreement is in place, then the next step will be the negotiation between the town and Hrsd on the transfer of the sewer plant, so that's when things get busy, for lack of a better word. Waterfront Committee, we did meet on the 13th. We talked about everything in this meeting that we discussed at Waterfront Committee, with the exception that Matt did present us with a first draft of a 3-year plan for the wharf, which you've indicated council will see next month. So more to come on that. Planning Commission, we attempted to meet last Tuesday night. We did not have a quorum, so no report. Personnel Committee, Catherine?
We did not meet.
And strategic planning, are you prepared to?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. What we did was we met last week and we, as a strategic planning group, have broken the town, for lack of a better word, into 7 areas. And what we're going to be doing is taking each area and looking at what does that area look like? What does it feel like? What changes need to be made? And putting all of that together as one long-term plan that's going to dovetail with our financial plan, that's going to dovetail with our 3-year plans that we're talking about now. It's also going to give us very specific targets for grant applications. So, you know, an example would be if I want streetlights and landscaping back in the Queen Street area, now I know exactly what the strategic plan is. I know exactly what program I need to go forward with grant requests and who I need to approach, that type of thing. So strategic planning is going to be creating the vision that we're then going to put together with financial models as well as grant applications and things like that. And next week, or I'm sorry, not next week, at the next strategic planning committee meeting, we're discussing the Queen Street and the parking behind Williston, basically. Okay.
Mayor's report. I'm at a loss there, so that brings us to town manager report.
Okay. Obviously, the written report is in your packet. I'm just going to touch on a couple of points. First is Hrsd, which I just spoke to you about, so I don't need to add anything to that. The ramp project update. The one thing is that we are going to be going before the County Wetlands Committee on November 19th. The reason that we're doing that, even though we're not sure technically we're required to, first of all, it makes really good sense to seek the expertise and opinion of the county and get their buy-in behind this project as well. They've been very helpful and supportive all along, so I don't imagine that's going to change. It's also going to help with the marine resource permit and the Army Corps of Engineers, knowing that the county has weighed in. So that's coming up. The Dhcd small business grant, obviously, you know, we're really excited. We've gotten a grant for $450,000 to distribute to our local businesses. We've gotten, I have a meeting with the state representatives on November 2nd to go through sort of a high level, this is what we need. If y'all were paying attention, Cape Charles was about, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks out in front of us. They just released their application. I happen to have that application, so we're going to be able to work with the people at the state, knowing that that application has already gone through the process, so maybe we'll be able to move along a little bit more quickly. I'm hoping that this COVID money, to be clear, this money does not need to be spent by 12/31. That's really important. So we're going to be able to really carefully plan and manage and administer this grant so that it distributes the right amount of money to the right businesses in town. We're really, really excited about that. And also the partnership with our the Onancock Main Street Initiative. They're going to be helping us to administer this grant, and both of us receive administrative fees for that. So we're not doing this grant administration for nothing, which is also nice. I let you know in the grant, in the writing, that we had applied for a FEMA COVID relief grant, and I got notification yesterday that we were awarded some money from FEMA to pay for some of the expenses. So what we're going to be looking at is sort of reappropriating that second tranche from the county so that we can't double dip, and we're not going to double dip. So we want to make sure that we're only being reimbursed for one thing at a time. I know now we're being reimbursed by FEMA for, so now we can reappropriate the money, and we'll obviously come back to you folks to let you know what that change is and all of that. So things are moving very quickly with COVID money, just so you know. I think that's it, other than what's in the written report. So I don't have anything more. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Council comments? Anyone have anything that they would like to bring up? Yes, Nathan.
I just want to talk about the Christmas in Onancock. That's part of your letter that went out.
It hasn't gone out.
Or it hasn't gone
No,
out?
no. I told you very clearly, until you guys give me your opinions, this doesn't go out. But we're putting it in with the real estate tax bills, which we want to start
I
stuffing.
remember now. Sorry.
No worries. I just want to make sure we didn't get out in front of you.
That the Christmas Homes Tour this year is going to be very different. And we're going to do a driving tour that will begin at the Onancock, at the historic Onancock School. We'll go up College Avenue, up Liberty, around Liberty Street, go up Sturgis Street, onto Mary Lane and down Ames. And there will be scenes at 5 different locations. So instead of an inside house tour, it's going to be on the front yard house tour. So we are going to need volunteers to help do the assembling of things along the way, and volunteers to be characters. We have Candyland. Anybody want to be an M&M? Yeah. We've got
You don't want to use decorating.
we've got things going. We've got
Sure.
we need dolls. We also have Raggedy Ann and Andy already set up and ready to go with that. And it's going to be a different tour, but it's going to be a tour. It's going to be Christmas, and you just have to believe, and that's the name of the tour. So please be in touch with me. My address, email, everything, phone number is on the town website. Please contact me if you're willing to help, because we are going to need a lot of help. Thank you.
Comment?
Anyone else?
Talking with friends and family around the state and in the country, they're getting a senior citizen discount on their trash collection if they only have one bag of garbage a week. Have we ever considered anything like that, or?
I don't have the ability to negotiate. I've just negotiated with Davis, the
Yeah,
contract for the next year, and they don't have any way to differentiate. They do one container per home, and they
Yes.
provide the container.
Yes.
So there's no way to determine what's inside the container. And actually, if it's just one bag, it costs them more because the person has to get out of the truck and go pick it up.
No,
Right
it
now-
would be in the.
It's in the container.
Right, and nobody knows what's inside the container. So I don't have any way to negotiate a lesser rate per. Now, the negotiated rate is actually, we're going to be getting a lower rate than we're currently paying, and we're going to get a cardboard dumpster that the community can use out behind the office here. So there's a recycling component and there's lower rate for the same contract. So I think we did a nice job there.
And I assume that we will discuss the feedback we get when you send out the letter and discuss no more decals. Because I would imagine there'll be people that will have comments on that.
Well, the public hearing on that very thing is going to be next month. Okay?
And I just want to mention that the Samuel Museum, the grounds are beautiful.
Yes, they are.
I mean, when they originally started that, I was on the committee also with Pat and Teresa, but I had some illness and I had to get off at that time. But I went by on Saturday morning and when they were just starting, and I went back later in the day and it was beautiful. But there's an issue. As those bushes, shrubberies and trees grow, it's gonna be a very dangerous place without lighting. So we need to somehow incorporate lighting in the future for that area. Because I'm serious, by the time the shrubbery grows up, people are gonna be able to do a lot of things in there that they shouldn't. So without lighting,
Great
Is there
point.
lighting on Boundary Law?
it's lighting all down Boundary, but not necessarily
Yeah,
enough.
Yeah, the shrubs are
New-
between the apartments and the blacksmith shop, and I think I see your point, so.
Yes.
That's a good point.
I mean, they're small now, so now
Would
it
be
is,
something
you know, it's not
to
a
go to
concern,
the
but
Eastern
it
Shore
will be.
Community
But there's an
Foundation.
A&N
For the
provide lighting
blacksmith
in
shop,
the
to go to the
backyard.
community foundation for that lighting, because our 501c3, and
I think
we're
we
giving
can
money away
request
to
it.
501c3s, even if there's a
Oh,
town
and,
connection,
because but the town pays
up to
that.
$50,000.
The town of Onancock pays the bill.
That's our town manager.
Great point. Any other council
That's a really
comments?
good point, thank you.
If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
No, we've got a motion for you to go into closed session, please.
I thought I had to adjourn the meeting and then, okay.
No, you can't adjourn the meeting.
So I don't know that I can somebody else read this motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we enter closed session of town council pursuant to 2.2-3711 of Virginia Code to discuss a personnel matter for a former employee.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, sir. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're officially in closed session. Thank you, folks, for attending. If you don't mind, please exit. Technically, this is closed, but Teresa, yeah, let Lisa.
Let me, y'all take her to the back, so y'all stand here, and I'll take her out
Yeah.
the back or whatever, so that way we don't interrupt you guys.